I think the public, the investing public, has lost sight of the fact that if you don't grow it or you don't mine it, it doesn't exist.
Right.
We talk about green energy, windmills, uh, solar panels, electric cars. All of those require huge amounts of copper.
Yeah. Welcome to episode 26 of the Crownsman podcast. We have a full show today. I'm your host, Jared Downey. This is my co-host, Gowdy Molina. How are you today?
I'm very, very, very good.
Don't say it.
I won't say it. I won't say it. Good morning.
Good morning. I knew I wasn't going to get away with it. We're getting back to digging into mining. We've got a few episodes now that are covering mining coming up. So that's exciting because that's sort of like the home base.
Yes.
It's always fun to dig into. And I was doing a little bit of research and I came across that globally, 16.9 metric tons is mined in the world. That was in 2016. So just the scale of what mining is. And I wanted to kind of go back to the beginning of where a mine actually starts. And so we have Paul Stevenson on from Sego Resources, and he's going to talk about, he's been involved in prospecting for years, so he's going to talk and walk us through that.
Mhm.
And also today, we also have somebody who's written a book
Yeah.
on the history of mining. So we got give the audience a chance to go even further back. So talk about who that is.
Yes. So we've got a book from Sean Daly that's from the Erksberg to Potosi, A History of Geology and Mining Since the 1500s. This book traces the history of mining and geology from the 1500s in the valuable silver mines of the Erksberg Mountains of Germany to the rich silver mines of Bolivia, including Potosi. Again, written by Sean Daly, and you can purchase the book on Amazon, and we'll include the links in the description below.
Yeah. I know we got a couple other sponsors to get to, but you actually know Sean. Sean introduced us. He's the
Yes.
mutual connection there. Yeah.
Yes, I've worked with Sean since about 2000.
Yeah. He's I've always impressed by someone who actually can put a book together and do all that research. But he's a pretty knowledgeable man when it comes to this.
Well, he's very knowledgeable. In fact, when the mining industry slowed down some years ago, he went back to university and got his master's degree in engineering.
Wow.
At 68, I think he was.
Wow.
Yeah, I think he's going to actually come on the show in the next we're in the next couple months and sort of walk us through some of the history that's in the book. So, but yeah, I hope people buy the book
Yes.
because it's supposed to be quite an interesting read. Who's next on the list?
We also have Data Cloud. Does it feel like you're drilling and blasting blind? Could your MWD measurements be better? The Data Cloud platform shows your lithology changes in real time for better blasting and fragmentation profiles. Check out their IoT sensors and cloud computing platform at datacloud.com and learn how you can know your rock today.
Boom.
Boom.
All righty. Paul, we're going to thank you for being here.
Oh, my
coming
pleasure.
In. Yeah. As most of our guests are, we met in person today. We've talked on the phone a couple times, and here you are. So, nice thing is we've got an hour. We can kind of walk through different parts of sort of your history of Sego, just what it actually means to be a prospector in today's world and in the past. There's lots of ground that I want to cover, and so I'd like to start with the prospector side. Sort of where do you start? You get up. Where do you? How do you even become a prospector as a sort of a career choice?
Well, it's difficult now, but when I was young, we had large companies doing exploration in British Columbia, and prospecting, the title prospector was like an apprenticeship. You would. I started with AMAX Explorations in 1965 when I was 15. It was a summer job. I enjoyed it, but the goal at the beginning was not to go into mining. The goal, I had different goals at different times in my first few years, but it grows on you.
Yeah.
Complete love for the industry and the characters, and it's like being a detective.
Mm-hmm.
So you go through a series of training on the practical side of explorations. A geologist would be a professional. The prospector, it's vocational. So you're trained in all the practical side, and for the academic side, you have to attend conferences and listen to papers, and you're self-taught
Mm-hmm.
on the academic side.
Right. And then so you, as you, then when you actually want to kind of go out on your own as a prospector, then what is that sort of like? How do you even choose? Because like when I look at a stat like 16.9 billion metric tons, there's a lot of different things. And when I was reading the research was coming from the World Mining Congress, and so when I'm reading through the research, all the percentages of you got lithium and copper and gold and minerals, and it just goes on and on and on. So how do you even choose which direction you're going as a prospector?
Um, it starts early as to what you want to specialize in, and I began in porphyry systems and porphyry copper gold, which are bulk tonnage, lower grade type deposits, are what interests me. So that's where I went. Um, uh, Dave Jaworski, a prospector from Stewart area, is more a gold prospector. Um, so in BC, we have high grade, lower tonnage gold deposits like the Pretium mine. We have bulk tonnage deposits like Highland Valley, Tech Resources Highland Valley, which is huge.
Mm-hmm.
Gibraltar, the Copper Mountain mine where we're working. So we have all these different types of deposits. So you're really choosing what your specialty is that you tend to fall into. And then when you're looking for an area to work in, you look where are those deposits found on a broad scale, BC wide, and then you narrow in.
Right. So when you're talking about the different types of deposits, so is that based on historic from the area, or how do you? I mean, as I said to you at the beginning of the show, I'm going to ask some real layman's terms
That's
questions.
fine. That's the best way.
So when you're talking about the type of deposits, what? I mean, I drive by and I'm looking at a mountain. I can't see that there could even be any type of deposits. It's just a mountain to me. Do you? Is it a excuse me. Is it a physical thing that you're seeing?
We start with in British Columbia. We have the BC Department of Mines
Yeah.
that provides geology maps of the areas. We have Geoscience BC that does detailed studies in various areas of the province. So there's a great database to start with to see where are we finding. One of the programs that's been done in British Columbia is stream sediment sampling. So do we find copper and gold coming from creeks in certain areas that are in the right geological domain? So there's a lot of data that you can go through from the comfort of your home or your office before you even start.
Right. And so those organizations, how are they funded to do that research?
Geoscience BC is mainly funded by the BC government, as is BC Department of Mines.
So they go out. They're giving sort of that almost like a macro testing that allows the prospectors and the geologists to then comb through that data and then centralize where they want to focus
Right.
on.
We have airborne geophysical surveys throughout this province. We have some very good geological maps throughout the province.
Yeah. Are you involved in either of those organizations? Are they over the years? Does their funding increase? Is it becoming as getting mines off the ground has become more challenging? Is it harder? That must be quite an investment. The research that they do.
Unfortunately, the BC Department of Mines has been underinvested in for many, many years. When I was young, we worked with a lot of times with the government geologists in the field. They would come into areas where there was interest and provide maps and instruct us in many ways. That's not the case so much now, and Geoscience BC is trying to fill some of the gaps, but I think both Geoscience BC and the BC Department of Mines need much more investment to keep the province.
Yeah. The next thing that I've wondered for actually quite some time is how does an area get approved to actually study for a prospector, or like how do you actually get an area that you have rights to explore? What's that process?
That process is you stake mineral claims. Like in the old days, we put up posts. Now it's done on a map, and Mineral Titles Online has totally up-to-date maps of what's been claimed and what's open. Most of the province is open. You can't stake in cities. You can't stake over farms that are under curtilage. They're being farmed. You can't stake in parks. But most of the province is open for staking. So when you have an area that you're interested in, you can go on the computer, Mineral Titles Online, and there will be a map showing you what ground is open and what's been staked.
So are you literally just driving to that area or hiking to that area and walking in and
Yeah, in many cases, yes, yes.
Okay.
It's still down to using a rock hammer and a good pair of boots.
Really? See, I didn't realize that. I didn't know how that. I've always wondered how that actually works. So, like when these geologists and that when they're going in, they are literally just it's an open province essentially if it's not staked. Wow. And so then so you haven't actually when you're just going in for that initial exploration, you don't have claims to it that at that point. You're just doing
No,
the
you're
exploration.
just looking. In our case, the property that we are now working on, two prospectors staked an area, and they worked on it for many, many, many years and did some good preliminary work that we could utilize. And so we optioned that ground from the two prospectors.
So how do they initially stake it though? Do they
In those days, they staked by using posts,
right.
and then we converted it to the new method after we acquired it.
Now, but do you pay to stake it and sort of have
Yeah,
that?
there's a staking fee. It's not very expensive.
Oh, it's not very
No,
much.
no.
No. Oh, okay. And so then now when you said option then what's that sort of process? You've got two prospectors, they staked this all out. So now they've identified this area as an area that they want to explore and now you're coming in as a prospector to the geologist
Yeah,
to say
prospector company.
Yeah.
And a prospecting company, and we have geologists. And we examined the data they had. We did a site visit to the property. And fortunately, one of the prospectors had his own little diamond drill. So
Oh.
we could actually look at some core.
Oh yeah.
And we were interested, so they got a series of cash payments, which have all been paid, and stock issues. Stock in our junior public company.
Right.
They will get, they now have retained 2.5% net smelter return, and we can buy half of that. I think it was for $1 million. And they will get, if it becomes a mine, they will get more shares in the company.
Right. Oh, okay. Okay, so then now I want to fast forward to now. So this is Sego that bought that,
Yes.
right? So Sego comes in. Now they've got this and now what starts happening once you actually have that property?
Well, we bring in Sean Daly and other geologists to map, to try to find outcrops on the property to get an idea of what the geology is doing. Because BC's glaciated, there's a lot of till cover. You don't get great rock exposure. So we do soil sampling from about that deep. Take soil samples, have them analyzed for copper, gold, and silver. And we utilize those target areas where we've got some kicks, where the geology is looking right. If it's possible, we trench using an excavator, dig down to the rock through the till, and map it and sample it, and immediately reclaim it. So that you dig a trench, you map it, you sample it, you refill the trench, and you seed over it.
Oh, okay. Now, sorry, I'm having some problems this morning. So, when you're doing that now, is there permitting? Do you have to permit everything you do on that? Like to go in with, you said that one of the geologists had a little diamond drill, and then you're talking about digging that far down. Is there different permitting that happens as you do that? Because you technically you have rights to the land, but you don't own the land at this point, do you? Or is that actually
We have the mineral rights.
right?
Where we're working, there's a rancher owns the surface rights,
Oh, okay.
and every stage is permitted. You put in your application and you put up a bond in case you don't do your reclamation,
Right.
and we keep our bond lower because we reclaim every time we work.
Oh, I see.
So we don't let it build up. And so you not only get your permitting, but it's good to work with the people in the area, with the rancher and the First Nations, right from the beginning, so that if any issues come up, you can solve them together.
Yeah, you were
Mm.
talking about that a little bit off air.
Mhm.
That's where one of the errors. Well, some people do it really well.
Mhm.
Some people do it as an error,
Mhm.
where they're coming. For example, the indigenous community, you come in and if you're or no, yeah, sorry, you were talking about other mines, not even with local communities.
Mhm.
They'll come in and they're sort of showing up to do their community stuff after they've already decided that they're going ahead with it, rather than starting at the front end.
Right, and that leaves distrust. Uh, there's a lot of money involved. It's really silly to leave it that late because doing all of the work, it's millions and millions of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
There's an example of a company that was in Peru. They spent $24 million developing a gold deposit, then went to the community, and the community said no. And the community always has the right to say no.
Yeah.
So we always start. We did not do any exploration on the property until we met with the rancher and met with the indigenous people, the Upper Similkameen Indian Band, and did a memorandum of understanding describing how we wanted to work together.
Yeah. And how much easier, like, what is that process when I guess that's, you're phoning the band and saying, we're doing this work up here and we'd like to talk?
Well, actually, I phoned the band and I didn't know anything about them. Most of my work has been north central BC. And I said, I'm being offered this property. How do you feel about mining? Because if the band was totally opposed to mining, I wouldn't go into their territory. I'm Métis, half-breed, so culturally, I just wouldn't go there if they
Right.
were opposed to it. And actually, the band manager at the time, Philippe, said, "You don't know anything about us, do you?" And I said, "No," and he said, "We're all miners.
Wow.
Buy the claims, come on up, and we'll help you."
Mhm.
And that's
Wow.
how we started, and it was very good.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Very nice.
What do you think? Do you think that would have been? What do you think would the response been the same though if you had have started and then made the phone call? Would it have been
No,
different?
yeah, I think it would be quite different.
Yeah.
I think uh, I think it's only polite. You're going into somebody's neighborhood to work, so it's just out of respect. You go speak to the people that live in the neighborhood.
When you're so going back to the permitting part, when you're wanting to drill, so you have the mineral rights, but you wanting to when you start, is there where are the situations where you would actually run into problems, or if you've got that, do you just have to are you letting them know, or do you have to actually apply between, okay, we're going to go a foot down, we're digging a trench, and now we're going to drill down,
Mhm. Each phase is you make the application. The government forwards. Before we put the application to the government, Sego goes first to the First Nations to go through it to see if they're comfortable with it, and then we submit it because the First Nations government is our closest government, and then we submit it to the Department of Mines, and uh, and then they send it out for referral to any affected First Nations communities, whatever.
oh, I see.
And so you go through that process before you can start work.
Yeah.
And we used to have to do that every year, but they've introduced some years ago a multi-year area-based permit. So we'd say we want to do this in this area over the next 5 years,
Yeah.
and so you don't have to go every year now.
I see. And so, sorry.
No, no, no. I
Oh.
was just. Oh, okay.
So now I want to get into a little bit about Actually, I want to talk about Sego, and I want to talk about that project, sort of where it's at, what the goals of it are. But I also want to sort of give the audience a bit of context. We got some sponsorship, so I want to transition into that part
Okay.
and then go back into sort of what the industry has to do, what your company's doing, all that sort of story. So let's do the sponsorship, Gary, and then you'll take it from there.
Awesome. Okay, we are also brought to you by Resource World magazine. They report on the business of mining, oil and gas, green technologies, and the events that affect these sectors. And you can catch their April-May issue and see the latest news at resourceworld.com. And we're also brought to you by, this is just about us, Crownsman Partners, and we have rolled out an on-site. We will come to your trade show, conference, or business function and do a 6-part web series /podcast, but not under our brand. This will all be done under your own brand. It is your web series for your business. It is very affordable and an incredible promotion material for your team. And you can find more about on-site at crownsman.com or email us at info@crownsman.com.
Yeah.
I should say I read Resource World religiously.
Do
Oh,
you?
you do? Well, that's fantastic.
Yeah, we've worked with them a couple months now, so
Yeah.
a lot of information out there. Is there would most people in your profession would they be reading it? Do you think?
I don't think I know anybody that doesn't read it.
Really? Well, there you go.
Yeah, exactly. So read Resource World magazine if you're not. No, okay. I actually have a few questions.
Yes.
Allow me. Okay, so I was kind of reading a little bit about you, and I wanted to give our viewers a little bit about your history. And you kind of touched base about this a little while just before. So you said you started at 15, summer job. I believe it was a job you got through your uncle.
That's right. My uncle on my mother's side was a geologist, and I asked him to get me a summer job. He said, "Oh, sure." He said, "Indians and half-breeds do really well in mining exploration." Years later, I thought, "You'd never get away with saying that now." I said, "No." And he looked at me like I was an idiot, and, and he listed off my assets, the fact that I absolutely love this industry, that I wouldn't do anything else. And he said, "Well, obviously I'm right." And obviously he was.
He was.
One of my mentors, is Jerry Asp, is Teltown, has been in the industry since his teens as well, and had done very well at it. We mentioned KMAW. He was one of the founders of KMAW, Canadian Aboriginal Mineral Association. So there are a lot of First Nations and other Indigenous people that work in our industry, particularly exploration, although the Upper Similkameen, many of them are actual
Miners.
work in mines. Yeah.
Okay. So you fell in love with mining and geology and prospecting. What was it that made you fall in love with it?
Well, it's very independent when you're prospecting. Even if you're prospecting for a company, you're on your own. You have a partner with you, but there's nobody standing over you. It appeals to independent people that like to work their own hours and do their own thing, which usually means you work longer hours than you would if you're working for a company directly. It's like being a detective. There's little hints that you might be on something, and in the porphyry copper exploration, like I'm involved in, alteration, the way the minerals have changed and been altered by heat and by hot fluids, is so important that a lot of times it's more important than actually finding the copper, because if the alteration is right, you'll find the copper and you can get size. But if the alteration isn't right, you might find some copper and it won't be size. So it's quite fascinating. And even the scoundrels in my industry are interesting. Like, they're charismatic and funny. And
well, you've been to you go to the Keg.
Yes.
And I've been there a couple times. I played in the hockey tournament, and it's quite a swath of people. There are some characters.
Yeah, but it's hardly fair, because it's Kamloops against the coast, and they have Jeremy Marlowe, a prospector, who's a fantastic hockey player.
Um, okay, and I want to know the difficulties in your field.
Well, it's boom and bust. We're in a bust stage now.
Hmm.
This has actually been going on and off since 2008, the financial crisis.
Hmm.
In my career, I've never seen such a long lack of interest in exploration. But the cycle will come up again. Uh, so it's not a good job. You're out in the field, you're away from home. It's boom and bust.
Hmm.
But at the same time, as a lifestyle, it couldn't be beat. I don't think. I think it's the most wonderful field of work to be in.
Is there something in particular that you feel is an, an aspect of your job that just makes you feel like this is it. This is what you're going to do and will continue to do and will want other people to do.
Well, the excitement of the discovery, and when it's booming, it's really exciting. Uh, but it's the people, like it's a great class of people to work with. They're very varied, very different. Um, in many ways, Sean and I are very, very, very different. So you have to be independent. Uh, every geologist and prospector I've met becomes a prima donna after about 3 years, in that you become forceful about your opinion, but you're always sharing it and learning from each other. Um, it's uh, it's a wonderful way of life. The people are incredible. Even in the down period, we spend time together,
Yeah.
and we still keep learning. The We don't know a lot about how geology works. We're still learning. There's new ideas coming up every year.
Um, two parts to this. Is there a project that stands out for you that was fantastic, and is there a project that you worked on that was not the greatest?
I did work on
That's a whole new show. Let's
a.
let's cut this
I
and let's
did
start
work.
that. I
I
want that
did
show.
work on a project some years ago that the founding board, we all left. We weren't comfortable with the people we were working with, and they weren't comfortable with us, and we left. Um, but then we formed a new company, Sego, which, by the way, was originally spelled Sago, but people kept saying Sago. It's pronounced Sego,
Mm.
in honor of my grandmother, who's from Six Nations of the Grand in Ontario,
Mhm.
and in Mohawk, Sego means hello.
Ah.
Oh. Huh.
So we formed Sego, and a lot of our work has been in this downtime. But I'm loving every minute of it. We have great consultants, absolutely fantastic people working the field with us. And,
Wow.
Yeah, I want to kind of dig into the when you're talking about downtime, and it's since 2008,
Mhm.
and we've our company, we look at a lot of different aspects. I mean, we've worked with baby diapers in restaurants,
Mhm.
doing consulting for them and all of that. So we sort of are, we're not just focused on the mining industry all the time. So much has happened in the world since 2008.
Mhm.
Technology companies, marijuana companies. Um, now we've got autonomous vehicles coming into
Mhm.
the world. So there's a lot of distraction from an investor. Bright gold used to be bright and shiny. Now there's all these things that seem bright and shiny. Is that part of the down, or is it what do you think is the main factor that
I I think it's a uh, I think the public, the investing public, has lost sight of the fact that if you don't grow it or you don't mine it, it doesn't exist.
right?
We talk about green energy, windmills, uh, solar panels, electric cars. All of those require huge amounts of copper.
Yeah,
Um, so it goes back to the natural resources that are needed for all of these new things.
and lithium.
And lithium, cobalt,
Yeah,
um, uh, all of that comes from the mining industry.
yeah,
So eventually, I think there will be a focus on that again.
yeah. But then that's yeah. Actually, we had oh no, I just forgot his what was that gentleman's name? Giovanni. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
and he was talking about Giovanni Kovacevic, right? Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and I always draw a blank on people's names when I'm
Mm-hmm.
supposed to reference them. But he was talking about the he authored a book called My Electrician Drives a Porsche, and he's talking about mining, the need for mining, especially for copper,
Mm-hmm.
because the amount they project that there's going to need as opposed to the amount there is just staggering.
Mm-hmm.
It's absolutely staggering. And so, is that what's going to happen? Is it going to? I mean, of course, we can't predict the future, but the demand is there. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I drive a plug-in hybrid,
Mm-hmm.
so everything in that car, except for a little bit of gas that I use, which is hardly any, is all mining products.
That's right.
Everything in it. And so, is it just going to all of a sudden? Are we just going to hit a wall, and they're going to go? We need all this stuff.
Well, downturns tend to go like this, and then suddenly we all realize, oh,
Yeah,
and the upturn is much steeper.
yeah,
So, yes, we're going to hit a wall. China is producing electric buses. Each bus uses about 164 kilograms of copper, um, and there's a vast number. They're cleaning up their country, from the
yeah.
environmental point of view. We'll be doing that too. Right now, when traders in copper tend to be looking at the U.S. dollar price and the trade war,
Mm-hmm.
but the reality is we need more copper,
Yeah,
and we're not. We've had this long downturn. We haven't had the exploration to give us new mines
yeah.
to fulfill that. So there will be a good upturn eventually. Yes.
Well, and the irony of it too is if you said, well, we maybe there's like aluminum, they
Mm-hmm.
use that as well, but
Mm-hmm.
that's same thing.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
It's all
Yeah.
all the same. And so now, what about Sego though? What is that? What are you trying to mine there? I know we've got this. I know you got a slide. I don't know if you have a little bit of information about it there, but what are you actually trying to? What are you mining?
We're
Or we're hoping to mine.
hoping to mine.
Yeah.
We're exploring for copper gold, much like our neighbor, Copper Mountain Mine.
Right.
Um, the gold and copper come together. That's very common in these alkalic type porphyries that
Right.
we're working on. Uh, so we're looking for copper gold deposit. When you say copper gold, it means the main mineral is copper, the secondary mineral is gold.
Gold. Yeah.
We also have some silver there as well, which we'll probably get a credit for if it became a mine.
Right.
The um, and there are actually platinum group metals too, but the smelter will take that.
Right.
We won't get a credit for that. So that's what we're looking for is an open pit copper gold mine.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's the long term goal.
Mhm.
It's quite a process. I mean, like you bought that in when 2005,
2005, we formed a company. We acquired the property, I think, in 2007.
right? It's quite a long journey. I mean, what
Well,
is?
it's been much longer because we did hit the end of the super cycle pretty much perfectly.
Yeah,
But we've been able to do work. We've moved the property forward. And that's what you do. We raise money. We try to do a little more work, a little more work. It's been picking up.
yeah,
We were lucky a year ago. We met a group in Toronto that were contrarian investors. I was at the Prospector and Developers Association of Canada, not this last year, but the year before, where nobody was talking mining.
mm,
It was all marijuana because that was
yeah,
running then. As a product of the 60s, I just shake my head. But anyway, and I was fortunate through a friend of mine, I met some contrarian investors.
What does that mean?
That means Bay Street, the investment community wouldn't give you 2 cents for copper. Somebody said, a contrarian would say, if nobody else wants it, now's the time to buy it.
Oh, I see.
You know,
Oh,
the old buy low, sell high.
yeah,
But that's very hard to do because to buy low, you have to buy it when nobody else cares.
right,
Yeah, and that's hard psychologically.
yeah,
But we were fortunate; we met some people like that.
right. And so you're trying to. So what are you trying to again asking these sort of layman terms. If we went to the Keg and Kamloops or PDAC or any of these big shows, all the people there understand this. But a lot of our audience, I mean, we get people watching from all different industries. So even when I hear it from 2005 to now you're raising capital and you are so you can continue on doing the work. The work, I'm assuming, is the exploration on that property. You're not restaking anything. You're looking within a claim.
That's right.
And essentially you're building up a portfolio within that claim. Is that right?
Yeah. That's right. So we try to advance it to attract the interest of somebody like a major large mining company that has lots of money that would take it to production. And that's the rub. Because you will get offers, but those offers sometimes are very much in favor of the large company and not in favor of the shareholders that have been holding the stock since 2005.
Right. Yeah.
So you have to, as a CEO of a junior mining company, you have to find a deal that enhances the value of Sego as well as moves the project forward and leaves enough that the major company going to put more money in.
Right, yeah.
Makes money as well. So it gets a little difficult at that stage, depending on who you're working with.
Yeah, and I guess so when you're doing these, when you're building sort of this history, I guess the one interesting thing about if you've got good results in one area, that stays a good result for the next 10 years.
That's right.
Anything you find is just added on. It's
on
not a liquid result.
No.
Right?
No.
And do you think, so a lot of these, because like a mine like Teck, like Resources, they're doing exploration within this huge, and they just keep exploring and exploration, but this, you're actually having to build a portfolio from the ground up.
That's right.
Yeah. There hasn't been a mine there. There is.
So Teck would be one of those types of companies that would follow what we're doing and reach a point, say, that where they would come and talk to you.
Yeah.
And but your results never go away. You're always building your asset.
Yeah. And then so you've got this. You've taken care of building that relationship with the Indigenous community, the local community. I mean, you're in Princeton. That's a mining town through and through, mining, logging.
Yeah. You couldn't be in a better place to work than Princeton, BC.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Tremendous people.
So now that mining, let's say a company comes in, and they take over that property, and the deal gets done and all that sort of thing. They need to then go and do that whole process of application because they actually want to set up a plant. And you said it's open pit, right? So they're going to put this. So that's a whole new process. Is that right?
That's right. Every step of the way, you need permits. If you're going to build a mine that's major, you would go through a full environmental study. And we're blessed in BC with it's a rule of law, and our geoscientists that are regulators, like the people at the BC Environmental Assessment Office, are geoscientists. So you're working with people that understand what the dangers are, what the hazards can be, and you try to work as a team.
Right.
It shouldn't be confrontational. It should be working together because you've got trained people that can really help you.
Right.
Devise that plan.
Yeah. Is it? What is the toughest part, though? Is it? I mean, that initial stage is because now that I understand that it's open, and then you go in and you start actually testing and then drilling. But that actual permit to dig this giant hole in the ground, that must be by far the toughest.
No, finding the deposit is the toughest.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Because everything's covered.
Yeah.
Most of it with soil.
Right.
So I gave a talk once on this, and a fellow came up with a comment. It's like putting a jigsaw puzzle together under a blanket.
Yeah.
So to even get to the point where there's that interest in making a mine is a long and arduous process.
So
once you know the deposit is there, it's different than logging. Logging, you go to different watersheds, so your environmental impact is always changing. but you
Right.
can draw a circle around a mine. So your studies can focus.
Right.
So that isn't. It's a process, a long process, and it has to be done well.
Hmm.
But it's not arduous.
Right.
You've got a circle that you know this is what we want.
When I talk to people in the industry, they're talking like now, a mine might take 10 to 15, even there's some that it'll take 20 years just to get off the ground.
Hmm.
That is not including,
Yeah, that's including your exploration.
that's
Yeah,
including
yeah,
right from
yeah.
day one.
Day one. Yeah.
Yeah. So once they actually get that permitting done, if the big company comes in and they go, yeah, we're going to do this. How long from that point? Because the geologist started. How long did they have that area before Sego came in?
Shortly after Dave Barrett was in power, because that area was all staked in the 60s when the Ingerbelle mine, as part of Copper Mountain, came to production. But then when the social credit got in after that Dave Barrett government, everybody dropped their claims. That sort of ended. There had been a boom, government interference, a bust, and during the bust, they were able to acquire those claims. And they worked on it steadily. I'm amazed nobody picked it up over that time, because they had enough. By the time we looked at it, they had enough information that we had a consultant that had mapped that area for the BC government for over 35 years.
Oh wow.
He was excited about it. My engineer friend that was on our board, he's since passed away, but Chris, who is very engineer, even he got excited. and our other directors were, were keen on it. So I guess that property had to find the right group that could see the potential of it
Right.
at the time.
Yeah. So it would, but so this has been going for years and years before
Years and years and years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so then you take it on 5. Now it's 2019, and now you're still, you're in that.
Even Copper Mountain, which is mining now,
Yeah.
when it shut down in late 60s, early 70s, there used to, the first time it shut down, before Ingerbelle was found, so let's go before the late 60s, there was a sign on the side of the road on the Hope Princeton Highway, look out. Days of yore, the miners' picks were heard to ring across this valley, but those days are gone.
Mm.
And that sign ended up getting removed so that the Ingerbelle pit could be mined. So where Copper Mountain Mine is today, it's been on and off in production for nearly 100 years. But there were stops and starts, the price of copper, the different things. And then when the Copper Mountain Group came back to it, they were able to come up with a newer a concept that permitted mining to start again.
Yeah. I was going to ask the when you talk about the boom and bust, to go back to that, the next boom will be a demand boom.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be the lack of resources.
Mhm.
That's, I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
if you look at any metric, that's pretty much what the story you'll see. Now that's probably going to be it'll be a long-term one, because that demand, you can't just snap your fingers and then there's all these resources available.
No, yeah.
So it's going to be a long-term when it actually happens. In the past, they've been shorter cycles. Have those cycles been based more on, there's always been a demand, but has there been a higher hype element that maybe didn't allow them to be as long of a cycle, whereas now, even though it's been a hard, long cycle of low, it's got potential to be a very long cycle now because of demand as opposed to hype.
Yeah, every cycle has a cause why there's the demand. The last super cycle we had that ended with the financial crisis was the industrialization of China. Right, China imports more copper than anybody.
Right.
They are basically the copper market
To this day.
to this day.
Yeah.
And then the world slowed down. Everything slowed down. So the next demand is going to be electrification. And so China isn't going to have big demand because they're getting onto the playing field. They're going to have a big demand because they're on the playing field and they're electrifying too. But so is the rest of the world. So I think this next cycle hopefully will be longer.
Yeah.
But you can trace the price of copper on a curve since Egyptian times.
Really. Really. Yeah, it's it's one of the oldest. Mining is one of the oldest, right?
Yeah.
It's it's been around. People have always liked the shiny things and the art, and then it turned into functionality. And what I wanted to look at, we didn't get to go through this. I wanted to kind of just quickly. It's not actually that long. It's only a few pages, right?
I've forgotten how many slides I sent you. Yeah, it's not that long. I didn't know really what you wanted. There, this is the long view. That's the Quinellia terrain with porphyry copper deposits on it, going right up through BC, and it actually they're called Island Arc, where it pushed in. The edge of North America was just over near Alberta, the Rocky
Right, yeah.
Mountains. And these were volcanoes and islands, and then it built up. And you could see where we cut it off at the U.S. border. It actually doesn't go much below the U.S. border.
Oh.
Because that is the curve where they came in. But that's the belt that is really, really good for porphyry coppers. So you're looking at BC with that slide. And if you go to the next slide, you'd see this is from Kamloops to Princeton. And you can see there's, I think that's still underexplored. I think there are some good properties in between Kamloops and Princeton to go yet. People think that because we've explored for so long in BC, we must have looked at everything.
Yeah.
But you've been in the bush. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not that easy.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of till cover. And again, we're using a government map there that's prepared by the BC Department of Mines and some of our own work. So then that's how you zoom in. That's what we did.
Oh, okay.
And this is my first project in southern British Columbia.
Oh.
And yeah, you were complaining earlier about the one bug. Where I've spent most of my career, we used to have contests. Hit your jeans with your hands and see who got the most mosquitoes.
Oh.
Oh, man.
And
Oops,
the
sorry.
project we're on is on a hilltop, like a plateau.
Yeah.
And there's always a wind. And since we've started on this Minor Mountain project, I've never once put on insect repellent.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
And then your next slide just shows you. That's what it looks like on mineral titles online. And you can see the green. You can't stake in there, and it tells you where you can stake and where you can't stake.
Oh, so this is actual.
Oh. Huh.
So then you're just so all these are these areas that you can stake, and then you essentially just pay these fees to have
fees
that.
for the size. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm not very good at this actually. There's Chris in out of Merritt. He's a diamond driller prospector, young guy.
Yeah.
He's really good at it, so I usually phone him.
Yeah. That's okay. I just wanted to kind of get a feel for what was actually in this. So
you basically pick out cells. Those are called cells that
like
you
each
want. You
little-
click on them, and
Oh.
you can get as many as you want wherever they're open.
Oh yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. We can go to the next.
Oh, and that's just our Memorandum of Understanding we did with Upper Similkameen. That's just the title of it, title page, and that's just so important. I can't stress enough how important it is to engage the First Nations before you start work and work together. I remember Philippe saying, "We want you to hire this guy." And I sort of looked and he says, No, it's nothing to do with politics. He's really, really good and you'll thank me within 2 weeks. 1 week later, I phoned and thanked him. Bob Dennis, who's an expert in reclaim, but he's also operates equipment. He has an eye for copper. He's just been a huge asset to us. we would never have had, and he knows all of the contractors in the area. If we need a cat, if we need a truck to bring something in, whatever, he knows everybody. So there's no downtime. So it pays off. It's super worth it, and you make friendships, which is nice. You know? And that's just showing how we use an orthophoto. That's a series of air photos put together, which gives you a picture of your whole claims. I have that picture of everything, and we take sections out of it. And we fly LiDAR, which gives us, with Eagle Mapping does it for us. And then that's a laser. It gives us really detailed topographic features. But when I was explaining where that trench went, when I did it at the end of the season, I was able to tell my GIS guy, well, it went from this tree here, because UTM can be off a bit,
Yeah.
you know, when you're using a GPS.
Yeah.
So we were able to plot things very accurately.
Oh.
Yeah. And then this is using the soil geochemistry, the soil sampling, and these are areas on the project where they overlap, where you've got copper, gold, and silver together.
Oh.
And in our last drilling, right here, see that little one? We didn't realize that's where we were. We were drilling to hit rock further to the north, and we uncovered a copper showing right there with that little.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's like a
And
small-
you can't tell because it's still covered, but it was within 3 feet of surface.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
yeah. And then this is our mapping the geology, and we have a consultant now that. My standard comment is I don't like to hire a consultant that's under 70, because I didn't figure I really got it, you know, all the conceptual, until I was 50. So I want somebody with 20 years experience. Sort of a running joke, but our consultant Vic Prado was pretty much retired, and we were very fortunate. Ron Britton was available, and I teased him because he was 2 years under 70, but he plays a lot of tennis, and he's really physically fit. He went out and mapped all of that up and down the hills.
Really?
Yeah, so we
Wow.
had to make an exception to get a guy that could actually do the work.
Yeah.
Rest of us are kind of older. And this is induced polarization, which gives us the resistivity, chargeability of the project. So this red is where it's quite chargeable, where the rock underneath will take a charge.
Oh.
And so that gives us an idea that there's something metallic there.
Right.
And the big circle in the middle where we started on, that's shaped like Cuba, so we called it the Cuba zone. And then with Sean Daly, of course, we had to call it the Cuba zone because a little dig at Sean. But that's how the Cuba zone's name came up.
Oh, okay.
And we also fly aeromagnetics, and we see how our zones fit in with the magnetics of the rock. And then we put it all together on top of each other. And sure enough, we do have the 4 targets, and to the south more targets. And that's what a trench is. So we dig down to the rock. In this case, we went so deep that they'll look into it to get how the rock is lying, but they actually sample it from the rocks that are pulled out by the excavator on top. They don't.
I see.
They don't go inside that.
Oh, I see.
Because it's too deep.
Mm-hmm.
And that's Bob and Kelly there. And there's a trench where we could get into, and you could see the copper.
Right.
on the
Yeah.
side.
Yeah, you
that's
can just
copper
see it.
oxide. Yeah.
Yeah.
Malachite.
Wow.
And then Ron, our consultant, has done thin section work where we get the rock cut real fine and put it under a microscope and see what the alteration minerals are. what exactly it is. And then we stain them with fluoric acid uh, uh, to etch the rock, and then put cobalt and nitrate and a chemical on it. And if it hits the right alteration, it'll stain that yellowy color.
Oh.
And then this is, we did early percussion drilling. It's a lot cheaper than diamond drilling. And this is a telephoto lens. Like Copper Mountain doesn't look that close when you're standing there.
Yeah.
You can see it, but not like that. But just to show that the range of them, and this is, you can see that this is just grassland, so
Yeah.
we can work in the winter there.
Yeah. Oh.
And that's a diamond drill. And that gives us solid core like that.
Right.
And we cut that core in half. You'll see on the next slide, I hope. Yep, that's Cody cutting the core. And then we assay it. And that's the Copper Mountain Ingerbell that was considered mined out, but they've discovered more ore on it now,
Yeah.
so they're expanding it.
And probably the new processes now that
Yeah.
they use are just you can get.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah, that and so it's funny because I'm actually glad we went through that, because when I'm going to actually read through this again when afterwards, because I've gone to things like, I go to PDAC or that, and I walk by the I've actually never really stopped, because it's sort of beyond my understanding of what all the the layering and the different the technology. How much does that help now with in the prospecting? Because I know in the actual ore processing and recovery, I mean, it's unbelievable, some of the stuff, like just the sensor based technology. I mean, it's
Well, we use an XRF, X-ray fluorescence gun to get ideas of what's in the rock. The technology has really helped, but there's nothing that will tell you what's there except a diamond drill. We call it the truth machine, right?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of different things that can give you those anomalies, like that IP chargeability red.
Yeah.
That could be pyrite.
Right.
Which isn't worth anything.
Yeah.
And sometimes underneath it, though, is chalcopyrite. So it gives you targets.
Yeah.
But like aeromagnetics, this deposit is just off that air mag low. Well, just off, means we drilled the low and we got a hint and we stepped out,
So the diamond drill still is what did you call it?
The truth machine.
The truth machine, yeah.
Yeah.
At the end of the day. So all this, so it's more like all the technology sort of, it gets you to the diamond drill faster is the goal, I guess.
That's right. And diamond drilling is a lot of art with the science. Like, we use Morcor drilling. They're based in Stewart. But their drillers, we like them because they get a feel for the rock, and they get you good, as you saw, there was good core recovery. That's so important. Like, you need that core recovery to know what's there.
Yeah.
And that is you're really reliant on the actual man operating this big machine.
Yeah.
And he'll feel it through the machine. They have a sensitivity to it. So it's diamond drilling is a wet, dirty, hard job.
Yeah.
But it's an art too.
Yeah. So for the goal of for Sego, the goal, like you said, is to eventually get to a place where the portfolio is strong. Which would you say, from your outlook? We'll wrap up, because we've covered a lot of ground that I wanted to cover. But how strong is it? When you look at your portfolio, I mean, you go to these places, so I guess everybody's kind of looking. They're kind of scoping each other's claims out. It's quite a strong one, though, Sego, is it not?
Well, I think so.
Yeah.
Obviously, but it is. It's got some very high grades within it. It's got excellent alteration. It's got good geophysics. It's got a lot going for it. But when we scope out each other's stuff, it's not like we're competing.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times, like if somebody gets a good hit, we're all excited for that person. Like
Yeah.
it's you're competing, but no, you're not really competing. You share information, you share data. When companies find a new way of looking at something, it gets published. They do a paper on it so that we can all
Right.
go and see.
Yeah.
So we share a lot of data. It's not really a competition. There's a company that has done a deal, which I would love to do a deal like them. Lately, some of the big mining companies have been taking down private placements, buying stock, a percentage of the company in the stock market, which gives the company the money to continue the exploration, and the senior partner, the major mining company, gets a piece of the company and maybe the right to come in if we do a joint venture.
Right.
It's cheaper for them, but if we don't produce a 1 billion ton deposit and it's only 500 million tons,
Yeah.
a mid-tier company will buy that. So the big company that put the money in, maybe it's too small for them.
But
They'll make money on the stock. when
is
it's
that a
bought
fairly
out.
new way of doing it?
I think Phelps Dodge did it years ago. PHP. But it's becoming more common now, which is new. GT Gold, which is up in the Golden Triangle in the north, last year came up with a tremendous discovery, and they just got a financing above the market, higher than where their stock was trading. That way, their project is very much the same kind of deposit we're looking for, and that's an exciting new one in BC.
Yeah. And all this information that, like, when you go on your website, just as to wrap up, where can the people can go to your website, right, to kind of
Yes.
look out, and we can.
And there's a 63 slide PowerPoint, so on it, and I tell people flip through it. Like it's really prepared for different audiences, and then we just skip through the part the audience won't be interested in. So don't feel that you see a map with the geophysics, you have to understand it. Flip to the next slide. Just go through it. We put as much data as we feel will really explain our project on the website. It's a very data-driven website.
Perfect. Okay. Well, we'll put that on the screen so they go. So,
Yes, we will.
Paul, thanks for coming on the show.
Real
We
pleasure. Thank
really
you very much.
appreciate it.
Yes,
Thank you so
thank
much.
you.
Hope you enjoyed it.
And thanks to our cameraman.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Phil. I didn't acknowledge you. That's you having fun back there. We're gonna do a quick sign off
Yes,
to
we
this camera
This
now.
camera.
Oh, you're always mixing up. Oh, we got a different. Oh, we changed cameras.
We did. We had a little mishap with the other one.
It happens. That's so. That is episode 26 of the Crownsman podcast.
We're getting up there.
We are getting
Gonna
up
be
there.
30 soon.
I just turned 30.
I know. That was me poking at you for being 30.
I love being 30. I'm only quarter of my way through my life. Quarter of a way.
Try being at my end.
Sorry, sorry, we're having a little difficulty here. Yeah.
We'll look at this camera.
We'll go to this camera.
Okay. We had bugs, and I'm coughing this morning, and
Yeah.
that's okay. We covered a lot of good information. Sometimes I feel almost a little bit selfish on the show because I'm just getting to ask questions. When you go to the big PDAC or something.
Yeah.
The guys are saying, you're at a booth and you're looking at people that are going to invest in the company and buy the product. They don't really want me sitting there and going. Some of them are. Some of them love it.
Yeah.
But I don't really. I don't really want to take up. I want them to be successful. So I kind of.
Most of us love to talk about our project.
That's true.
It's getting us to stop that's
Yeah.
difficult.
Maybe that's what it is. I'm trying to get to the next. But I like doing the show. It's a little bit selfish because I get to ask some of these really simple questions that and just expand the knowledge. So we're gonna have more episodes. We have a couple really good mining shows coming up here as well. Thank you to our sponsors, and there's lots of places you can watch depending on which platform you're watching or listening on right now. But Gowdy, what are some of the other platforms we're on?
Yes. So, well, first of all, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. All our episodes are there, so you can go ahead and watch them. But we're also on Anchor. So if you just want to listen to the podcast on your way to work or wherever it is you are, yes, Anchor, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Castbox, Breaker. Oh man, I know there's more, but I'm drawing a blank now.
The one you listen to, we're probably on it.
Yeah, pretty much.
And the Facebook group,
Yes.
that's a fun place to be. That's sort of the voice of industry. It's sort of the group. People comment, and it's just
Yeah.
sort of the fun place of
It
the
is.
show.
It
so.
really is. So please join our Facebook group, and and if you want to be a guest on the show or a sponsor, just email us info@crownsman.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for watching the show, everybody. We will see you next week.